For 7 years, Porter Airlines has been flying over the Toronto skyline out of Billy Bishop Airport on Toronto's waterfront. Now Porter has ambitious plans for expansion of said airport, including the addition of so-called whisper jets, capable of carrying more passengers and servicing more distant destinations. Joining us now for more on those plans, here's Robert Deluce. He is the CEO of Porter Airlines, and we welcome you to TVO.
Yes, thank you. Nice being on your program.
We want to put up a graphic just to start with to show people where you go and where you would like to go. This is not an exhaustive list, but control room, there it is right now. Those blue lines are essentially your current routes, which obviously are mostly around the Great Lakes and a few points beyond. And then we're going to put up some red stripes, which show that you have really much more ambitious plans beyond where you already are. What makes you think you can expand to such a vast array of new cities?
Well, I think, in these almost 7 years, our 7th birthday will be on October 23rd, so it's coming up quite soon. We have delivered on all of what we originally committed to. We're now flying to some 19 destinations in Canada and in the United States. And we operate 26 aircraft with now 1,400 team members. And I think what we've been hearing for the last couple of years or more is that passengers like the sort of service they're getting from Porter. Many say that they love Porter. They ask us on a regular basis if we could provide the same sort of service to a place like Vancouver or LA. Florida is a destination we get asked about probably more often than anything.
And do you think that's a much bigger footprint that you're looking at?
Well, the aircraft that we've selected is state-of-the-art. It had its maiden flight just a short time ago, incredibly quiet, capable of serving all of those places on a non-stop basis from Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport, with a very modest extension of up to 200 meters into the water at each end of the main runway, and without affecting boat traffic or the enjoyment of the harbor or the outer lake by Torontonians. So it is really a good solution to an urban airport, and it's incredibly quiet.
I'm going to come back to the extension of the runway because that is a controversial thing, but I first want to touch on just how quiet these planes are, because of course your airline is known right now for going with turboprop planes, which are shorter distance, of course, and we'll put a graphic up here and show how the whisper jet, as it's called, compares to the turboprop plane. People are very skeptical that this CS-100 is going to be as quiet as what you've got running right now. Should they be skeptical?
I think they might have had some reason to be skeptical, despite the assurances of Bombardiers and the performance guarantees that we have in our contract up until the time that the aircraft flew, which was just now about a month ago. And but I think most of those concerns were put to rest when the CS-100 whisper jet flew for the first time on September the 16th. And I happened to be there, and it was incredible. The aircraft was described by many as being silent, and it was the next best thing to being silent that you've ever heard of, a jet aircraft. It departed in front of about 3,000 people who were there, including some Bombardier employees and some invited guests and media, and it was almost by the grandstand and on its way off for its 2.5-hour test flight before some people even noticed that it was airborne. So it was that quiet, and it was preceded in the flight by a Global 5000 aircraft, which is pretty quiet and environmentally friendly, but not as quiet as that CS-100. I think that this aircraft could well come in, certainly at comparable levels to the Q400 that we operate, but maybe even quieter.
Well, the other argument besides the noise is that if you get your way, there will be a heck of a lot more traffic flying in and out of Billy Bishop, and I guess people who live down by the waterfront don't want that large number of planes flying in and out. Is that an issue?
Well, it's a little bit of a misconception, because you have to think about the CS-100, the whisper jet, in terms of what its mission would be. What purpose would we use it for? And when you're flying it out to Vancouver or to Los Angeles or down into Florida or the Caribbean, you kind of realize that, it might well go out in the morning 3.5 to 5 hours, and then maybe an hour changeover on the ground at the other end, and then back to original destination. So it could be gone 8 to 10 hours. So on a typical return flight. And that's quite different than the Q400 turboprops that we operate today. Now, the turboprops are quiet, but they do come and go on a regular basis from Billy Bishop Airport. So we might get 8 flights in a day with a turboprop, whereas we may only get 1 flight in with these Whisper jets. And so the amount of contact they actually have with the Billy Bishop Airport would be pretty minimal.
Okay, you need City Hall's approval to do this, right?
Absolutely.
How's that going?
Well, you know, we don't take anything for granted there. I mean, it's one of those situations where you have to go to every single councillor plus the mayor, and you have to convince them of the merits of the plan. We are hopeful that by the time City Council votes on this on the 16th of December, that they'll be convinced of the benefits that it will bring to the city and to the traveling public. So, and there'll be 1,000 new jobs added as a result of what we're doing as well, which will add to the already pretty extensive $2 billion annual economic benefit that accrues to the city of Toronto.
Let me follow up on that, because you talk about 1,000 new jobs, you talk about improvements to the airport, as you would describe them, you talk about the added economic benefits that would accrue to the city of Toronto, and yet the opposition to this is really pretty strong. And I mean, even today, when some of our viewers got the e-blast that you were going to be coming on the program, we got emails from people saying, how can you let him on the air? He's just going to come on and spew his propaganda. I'm not going to donate to TVO anymore. We got this kind of feedback. What is it about what you're doing that seems to have so many people ticked off?
I don't believe that there are a large number that are ticked off. Quite frankly, I think it's a very small, vocal, well-organized group. When we went through and examined those who were opposed to us coming in with our turboprops, 7 or 8 years ago when we first put forward our plan, and we examined those who stood up and deputed at City Hall against the plan, and who claimed that the moon and the stars and the sun were all going to line up, and that it was going to be a pretty grim scene, right? Some 7 or 8 years later, that hasn't happened, but the very same individuals, almost to a person, in some cases, same organization, different person leading it, but they're all stacked up there again, and they don't want anything to happen, anything to transpire that would change whatever it is that they're doing.
You think they want you out of there altogether?
I think that they probably have given up in terms of getting us out of there altogether, although on the Community Air website they still claim that they would like to turn the airport back into a park. That's never going to happen. And the benefits that came from the original turboprop proposal would be probably would be no less than the benefits that would come from our new proposal would be no less than the benefits that accrued to the city as a result of us bringing in the turboprops that are made in Toronto at Downsview, and that have resulted in a lot of new options in terms of flights, all at affordable pricing.
Let's talk about the runway, because you referenced that earlier. You do want to extend the runway in each direction. How many meters?
What we need in order to use the CS100 Whisper jet to its full potential, meaning being able to run it right out to Vancouver or down to LA or into the Caribbean, would be up to 200-meter extension at each end of the main east-west runway.
How would that affect what's going on now in Lake Ontario?
Well, not at all. No material movement of those buoys. Same sort of enjoyment of the waterfront and of the inner harbor and the outer lake as is presently enjoyed by Torontonians.
Not more dangerous for boaters?
Absolutely not. I mean, the marine exclusion zone buoys would not extend any further to the east or any further to the west than is presently the case. And that's a result of the fact that the CS100 Whisper jets would be touching down exactly where the Q400s are touching down now on the runway. So they're not touching down right at the end of the runway where the extension would have taken place. That's really only used for takeoff purposes. But where it touches down will be precisely where the Q400s touch down now. So the approach angle and the way in which the aircraft would come into Billy Bishop Aircraft would be very similar to what presently exists, and therefore not requiring those buoys to move out any further, and of course allowing Torontonians to continue enjoying the waterfront, whether it be in the inner harbor or in the outer lake area, sailing area, race area.
Okay. Let me ask you about your company, because it's a private company, right? So you don't have to answer any of these questions, I guess, if you don't want to, because you're not obliged to. But I am curious, is Porter profitable?
Yeah, we have been profitable for the last 2 years, and we've been operating now for almost 7 years.
So it took you 5 years to make a profit?
Well, we had some early stage profitability, but then we ramped up very significantly, sort of in that 2008 through to 2010 time period. We actually went from about 6 or 8 aircraft right through to 20 aircraft in a very short time period. And it was also arguably during the worst economic downturn that we've experienced in some time. So we had a lot of capacity there. We've sopped up most of that capacity. Our load factors are quite good. We have a very low break-even load factor. And in the last 2 years, we've actually paid out profit sharing to every one of our 1,400 team members. So we're very pleased with that.
I presume break-even load factor means how many people you got to have on each plane in order to accrue a profit?
In order to cover all costs and be generating profit. So we have a break-even load factor that's closer to the mid 50s, and we have been as low as 49% break-even load factor. Some carriers, including Air Canada, for instance, would be closer to the low 80s, and even a relatively efficient company like WestJet would be in the mid 70% break-even load factor range. So we do enjoy a very significant competitive advantage with respect to our costs and the.
Is that because your people aren't paid as well?
No, I would say that it's more our people are quite efficient. We have a very good aircraft, and even our selection of the CS100 is an airplane that will give us a 20% operating efficiency with respect to fuel burn. And of course, less fuel burn means less CO2. So there's some other spin-off benefits when it comes to the environmental scorecard with this new Whisper jet as well. I mean, it really does set new standards.
You've heard this argument before that Robert Deluce is just trying to improve his footprint and reach out farther to further destinations because he's getting ready to sell his airline and he wants to make it more attractive for a takeover. Would you speak to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to it. I mean, I've never had more fun in an airline, and I've been in this business since I was,
well, your dad was in the business before
exactly.
you.
And I learned to fly at Toronto City Airport, or Toronto Island Airport, as it was then called, as a high school student while attending St. Mike's College.
You still fly?
I do fly more in the summer than in the winter months, but I do have an aircraft and use it regularly. But you know, all 1,400 team members are highly motivated. I think they love what we're doing. They look to the new possible period of growth and development as something quite exciting. And you know, I think that even the award that we received from Condé Nast here more recently, in terms of being the best small airline in the world, we all take a lot of pride. All 1,400 team members, myself included.
You were chosen by Condé Nast magazine as the best small airline in the world.
Yes, that's right, and that's in the more recent edition of Condé Nast.
I mean, your airline gets a lot of headlines, and we were talking about it on this very program not too long ago, and one of our guests, Joseph DeCruz, was he from Rotman, Meredith? I think he was from Rotman School, yeah, had this to say. You watch the monitor over my shoulder here, and we'll come back and chat after we roll the clip. Roll tape, please.
This is a very bold move on Porter's part, and it's also very risky from a business point of view.
How come?
Well, two things. From the operational point of view, they now will have 2 types of aircraft, which adds huge complexity to the operations. And every low-cost airline that I know of has succeeded because they have only 1 type of aircraft.
They kept it simple.
And kept it very simple. So he's got a challenge on his hands there. The other challenge he has is Air Canada and WestJet, because they're not going to allow Porter to come in without a fight.
They're going to want in too.
No, they're going to drop prices.
You want to comment on that?
Well, I respect Joe and his view on it. I would say the one thing that, when we bring in a second type and the fact that it's actually made by the same manufacturer, Bombardier, and within engines that are made by Pratt & Whitney, that is very helpful in terms of having some commonality. Now, it isn't the same thing as having an A320 and an A321 in terms of the interchangeability, but on the other hand, we have worked with both Bombardier and Pratt & Whitney. We know both companies well. There's no real adjustment needed there. And the technology, although drastically more sophisticated and improved on the CS100, it's still from the same family of aircraft. So that does make a big difference.
Okay. What about Air Canada and WestJet predatorily pricing you out of the market?
Well, they have been predatory right from day one, and we wouldn't expect them to act any differently. But I don't know how they would drop their prices any lower than they have. They're basically giving their tickets away now. But I think it's more than price a ticket. I think it's level of service. It's it's some of the amenities that we put into our product that we don't ask you to pay extra for, including the fairly comfortable all-leather seat aircraft and the amenities, including the premium snack and the complimentary beer and wine and other things like that. I think make for a good overall travel package, and our customers have been incredibly loyal. Even after Air Canada came into the island, or it came into Billy Bishop Airport, and they've been there a little over 2 years now serving Montreal, we haven't had any measurable impact by their presence there, and our passengers have remained very loyal. So we're not too concerned about that. I think what we need to do is stay focused on providing that same high quality level of service, and we will do that.
Last minute here, I got 2 fast questions. Why is it called Porter?
Well, it's a good question. We're asked it quite often, but it is a name that derives from the original porter, whose role was to help you on your way, reduce your overall hassle, just make your travel a lot easier. And besides that, we were able to get the .com and .ca internet codes, if you will. And
okay. And why the raccoon?
Well, the raccoon is feisty. He's Torontonian in some respects. He's certainly urban. He's resilient.
It's a pain in the ass, though. No one likes raccoons.
Well, on the other hand, they have a very high survival rate, and even if you knock them down, they get up again, and they persist. And I think, in spite of the fact that some might have written us off at a very early stage, much like a Roots Air or some other carrier that only lasted a short period of time, we're now 7 years in, going strong, and with a vision for the future that I think could bring immense benefits to Torontonians and to the traveling public.
We'll continue to watch with interest. Robert Deluce, CEO of Porter Air, thanks so much for coming into TVO tonight.
Thanks for inviting me.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.